The artificial gravity on Helix 9 always felt slightly off to Dahlia Novak, a hair too light, as if the station engineers had calibrated it for beings with less bone density than humans. Not that it mattered much to her anymore. In her hover chair, gravity's minor fluctuations were just one more data point in her navigation systems. Traffic pattern violation, docking bay 17, announced the station's bland synthetic voice. All personnel clear the approach zone. Dahlia ignored the announcement, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls of her chair as she maneuvered through the bustling commerce level. The Helix 9 station hung at the edge of 3 trade routes, a perfect position to serve as a waypoint for legitimate cargo ships and a haven for those with more flexible interpretations of property rights. It wasn't her first choice of residence, but after the accident, her options had narrowed considerably. "Ms. Novak, you're heading into a restricted area," chimed her chair's navigation assistant, a simplified AI she'd named Pascal. "Override," she muttered, continuing toward the tech market in the station's lower rings. Pascal meant well, but his programming couldn't understand that restricted was often where the most interesting parts of life occurred. 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days had passed since the explosion aboard the Astral Dawn had crushed her lower body. The corporate investigation had deemed it an unfortunate equipment malfunction. Dahlia knew better. Navigation officers didn't accidentally discover transmission anomalies indicating corporate espionage without consequences. But proving it was another matter entirely, especially from a hover chair. The tech market sprawled through 3 interconnected chambers, a maze of stalls and pop-up shops where everything from ancient Earth relics to cutting-edge Centaurian neural interfaces could be found for the right price. Dahlia was searching for something specific, a rare part for Pascal's sensory array that might help her chair better navigate the increasingly crowded station. "You're overheating again," she told her chair, feeling the subtle vibration in the left gravitational stabilizer. The Andromeda Medical Corps had assured her it was the best mobility technology available under her insurance coverage. Best, perhaps, but far from reliable. "Excuse me," a deep voice called from a nearby stall, "but that G7 compensator is about to fail." Dahlia turned her chair, eyes narrowing at the stranger who'd spoken. He leaned against a counter cluttered with dismantled tech, shirt sleeves rolled to reveal forearms marked with the faint blue lines of subdermal tool interfaces. His dark hair was pulled back in a short ponytail, and a scar traced a line from his left eyebrow to his temple. "I don't recall asking for a diagnostic," she replied coolly. The man grinned, pushing away from his counter. "You didn't have to. That particular model whines at a specific frequency before failure. Most people can't hear it, but," he tapped his left ear where a small silver device curved around the shell, "auditory enhancement. Occupational necessity." Despite her irritation at being approached, Dahlia felt the compensator's vibration intensify. "And I suppose you just happen to have a replacement part?" "Better," he said, circling her chair with professional interest. "I can fix the one you've got. Those Andromeda Core models use cheap materials but solid design principles." "And who exactly are you to be offering mechanical services?" Dahlia asked, though she already suspected the answer. The tech market had its share of geniuses and charlatans, often in the same person. "Ezra Kane," he replied with a slight bow that seemed half sincere, half mocking. "Engineer, inventor, and occasional procurement specialist for hard-to-find technology." "Salvager, you mean," Dahlia corrected. "Or some might say scavenger." Ezra's grin widened. "Some might. Others might call me the only person on this station who can fix your compensator before it burns out completely and leaves you stranded." He gestured to her chair. "That's a core component. When it goes, and it will go within the next 12 hours, your entire mobility system crashes." Dahlia weighed her options. She'd planned to visit the authorized service center in the upper rings next week, but if Ezra was right about the time frame. "Fine," she conceded. "What's your fee?" "Information," Ezra said, already collecting tools from beneath his counter. "I've seen you navigating this station like someone who knows space lanes better than hallways." Am I wrong in guessing you were a pilot or navigator? Navigator, Dahlia confirmed reluctantly. Commercial transports. Not anymore, obviously. Perfect. Ezra's eyes lit up. I need navigation expertise for a project. Nothing illegal, well, not very illegal. More of a gray area. Dahlia raised an eyebrow. You haven't even fixed my chair, and you're already recruiting me for questionable activities? I believe in efficiency, he replied, gesturing toward the back of his shop. Shall we? With few alternatives, Dahlia followed him through a narrow doorway into a surprisingly spacious workshop. Unlike the cluttered public stall, this space was organized with meticulous precision. Holographic diagrams floated in the air, displaying complex mechanical schematics. A partially assembled exosuit hung in one corner, its inner workings exposed. You can work here, she asked, genuinely impressed despite herself. The station management and I have an understanding, Ezra explained, clearing space on a workbench. I help maintain systems they can't afford to replace, and they pretend not to notice some of my more creative interpretations of licensing laws. As he helped her transfer from her hover chair to a bench seat, Dahlia caught a glimpse of a design floating in the far corner, what appeared to be articulated mechanical legs with a neural interface far more sophisticated than anything she'd seen in rehabilitation. What's that project? She asked, nodding toward the hologram. Ezra glanced up, then quickly dimmed the display. Just theoretical work. Something to keep my mind busy during station night cycles. His casual dismissal only piqued her interest further, but Dahlia let it pass. She watched as he removed the access panel on her chair and began examining the compensator, his movements quick and precise. So, he continued, about that navigation expertise. I've acquired, let's say salvaged, a scout ship with some interesting capabilities. The navigation system is locked to specific coordinates, and I need someone who can help me recalibrate it. Why not just by navigation charts like a normal person? Dahlia asked. Ezra's hands stilled briefly. Because these coordinates lead somewhere that doesn't appear on any official charts. Somewhere the previous owner was very interested in keeping secret. Despite herself, Dahlia felt a flicker of the old excitement that had drawn her to space navigation in the first place, the thrill of discovering routes and anomalies that no one else had documented. There, Ezra said after 20 minutes of work. Good as new. Actually, better than new, I replaced the thermal regulator with a Tannhauser component. Should run cooler and last longer. Dahlia transferred back to her chair, immediately noticing the difference. The persistent vibration had vanished, and the chair hummed with a smoother, more efficient energy pattern. It feels different, she admitted. Lighter somehow. I also balanced the gravitational field, Ezra said, wiping his hands on a cloth. The factory settings are calibrated for medical environments, not space stations with fluctuating gravity. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits who understood how to adapt and improve upon what others took for granted. About your navigation problem, Dahlia said slowly, I might be interested. But I need to know more first. Ezra's smile returned, genuine this time. Fair enough. Have dinner with me tomorrow? There's a Jovian fusion place on level 3 that does remarkable things with synthesized protein. Is this a business meeting or something else? Dahlia challenged, not entirely opposed to either possibility. Let's start with business, Ezra replied, and see where the conversation takes us. As Dahlia guided her newly improved chair back through the marketplace, she realized that for the first time in 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days, she felt something like anticipation for what tomorrow might bring. The Jovian Fusion restaurant on level 3 was tucked between a hydroponic garden and an oxygen recycling station, its entrance marked only by a subtle holographic sign that shimmered like Jupiter's atmosphere. Dahlia arrived precisely on time, her hover chair gliding smoothly thanks to Ezra's modifications. You're punctual, Ezra noted as she approached his table near the viewport that offered a panoramic view of the starfield beyond Helix 9. He stood, dressed in slightly more formal attire than his workshop clothes, though still adorned with various tech tools clipped to his belt. "Navigator's habit," Dahlia replied. "Space doesn't forgive tardiness." The restaurant's interior was bathed in amber light, simulating the gas giant's eternal sunset. As Dahlia positioned her chair at the table, she noticed Ezra had already ordered a bottle of Ganymede ice wine, its surface frosted with condensation. "I hope you don't mind," he said, gesturing to the wine. "It's rare to find authentic Jovian vintages this far from the inner planets." Dahlia raised an eyebrow. "Expensive taste for a salvager." "I prefer to think of it as appreciating quality engineering in all its forms," Ezra replied, pouring her a glass. "Fermenting anything in Jovian gravity is a technical marvel." They ordered, Dahlia selecting a dish of engineered protein infused with spices from Earth's Mediterranean region, Ezra choosing something with bioluminescent algae that pulsed blue-green on his plate. As they ate, Dahlia found herself studying him more closely than she had in his workshop. The scar on his face caught the amber light, giving his features a certain intensity. "So," she said finally, "tell me about this mysterious navigation system you need help with." Ezra leaned forward, lowering his voice. 3 weeks ago, I was working a salvage job in the outer armed debris field, completely legitimate, I assure you." The twinkle in his eye suggested otherwise. "I found a scout vessel, Siren class, with minimal damage. These ships were discontinued 5 years ago after the Centauri Accord restricted their stealth capabilities." "I'm familiar with Sirens," Dahlia nodded. "Fast, nearly undetectable by standard scanners, but notoriously complex navigation systems." "Exactly. This particular ship had been deliberately abandoned, not destroyed or damaged. The NAV system was locked to a specific set of coordinates in the uncharted region between Sector 12 and the Magellan Void." Dahlia's interest peaked. "That's disputed territory. No corporate jurisdiction, minimal central authority presence. The perfect place to hide something valuable," Ezra agreed. "Or dangerous. And you want me to help you find whatever it is," Dahlia concluded, taking a sip of her wine. The liquid was crisp and carried notes of minerals found only on Jupiter's moons. "I want your expertise in unlocking the NAV system," Ezra clarified. "What we do with the coordinates afterward is open to discussion." Dahlia studied him over the rim of her glass. "Why me? There must be dozens of navigation specialists on Helix 9 with fewer complications." She gestured to her hover chair. Ezra's expression sobered. "Because your accident wasn't in the standard registry. It was classified under corporate security protocols. That suggests someone wanted to keep it quiet." The wine suddenly tasted bitter on Daria's tongue. "You've been investigating me." "I've been investigating a pattern," Ezra countered, pulling a small projector from his pocket and activating it under the table. A holographic display appeared between them, showing 5 personnel files, Dahlia's among them. 5 navigation officers from different companies, all involved in accidents over the past 4 years. All working routes that intersected with the coordinates locked in my salvaged ship. Dahlia's heart raced as she scanned the other faces, strangers, yet somehow connected to her by invisible threads of fate or conspiracy. What happened to them? 2 died in their accidents. 1 disappeared after recovery. The 4th. Ezra hesitated, is reportedly living under Central Authority protection on Europa. And then there's you. Living in plain sight on a frontier station, Dahlia finished, her mind racing. Because no one thinks I'm a threat anymore. Ezra deactivated the projector. I think whatever is at those coordinates explains what happened to all of you. And I think you deserve to know. Dahlia fell silent, processing this revelation. The station's ambient hum seemed to grow louder in the quiet between them. I'll help you, she decided finally. But not just with the navigation system. If we find anything linked to what happened to me, to us, I want to be fully involved. I wouldn't have it any other way, Ezra replied, his expression grave but his eyes bright with something that might have been admiration. 3 days later, Dahlia found herself in a private docking bay on Helix 9's maintenance level, facing the salvaged Siren scout ship. Its sleek hull was matte black, designed to absorb rather than reflect energy signals, making it nearly invisible to standard scanners. "She's beautiful," Dahlia whispered, running her hand along the ship's surface. The familiar longing tightened in her chest, the desire to be among the stars again, plotting courses through the infinite darkness. "I've named her Phantom," Ezra said, activating the entry ramp. Seemed appropriate. Inside, the ship was surprisingly spacious for a scout vessel, its systems meticulously restored. Ezra had clearly spent considerable time bringing the Phantom back to operational status. "The NAV system is locked down tight," he explained, leading her to the cockpit. "Triple encrypted and biometrically sealed. I've managed to bypass the biometrics, but the encryption is beyond my expertise." Dahlia positioned her hover chair before the navigation console, her fingers hovering over the controls. It had been 3 years since she'd touched a ship's systems, but her body remembered, muscle memory awakening like a dormant creature stirring from hibernation. "This could take time," she warned Ezra. "We have time," he replied simply, settling into the co-pilot's seat. Hours melted into days as Dahlia worked to unlock the Phantom's navigation system. She returned to Ezra's workshop each evening, her mind buzzing with encryption algorithms and navigation protocols. On the third day, Ezra surprised her with something unexpected. "I want to show you something," he said, leading her to the private area of his workshop where she'd glimpsed the mysterious project her first day there. The holographic display activated, revealing the detailed schematics of biomechanical legs, far more advanced than standard prosthetics, with neural interfaces that appeared almost organic in design. "What am I looking at?" Dahlia asked, though she already suspected the answer. "A mobility solution that doesn't involve floating around in a chair," Ezra replied. "I've been developing it for years, but I've never had the right inspiration to complete it." Dahlia studied the schematics, noting the complexity of the neural connections. "This goes beyond standard medical technology. Standard medical technology is designed by committees and approved by bureaucrats," Ezra said with undisguised contempt. "This is designed by someone who believes in pushing boundaries." "And what exactly inspired you to show me this now?" Dahlia asked, though something warm unfurled in her chest at the implication. Ezra's gaze held hers. "Because if we're going to chase dangerous coordinates into uncharted space, you might want options beyond that chair." "This would take months to build and calibrate," Dahlia observed, still examining the schematics. "Then we'd better get started," Ezra replied. "Because I cracked the final encryption layer on the Phantom's navigation system this morning. We have the coordinates." Dahlia's head snapped up. "You did? Without me?" "I had a breakthrough around 3 a.m., he explained. "Couldn't sleep, so I applied that algorithm you suggested yesterday. It worked." Excitement and apprehension coursed through her. "So where are we headed?" "A system designated only as QN 773, Ezra said. "No official records exist, but the ship's log indicates regular trips between there and various corporate headquarters." "Including my former employer," Dahlia guessed. "Exactly. According to the fragments of data I recovered, QN 773 contains a small moon or large asteroid that houses some kind of research facility. The last entry was dated 1 week before your accident." Dahlia's fingers tightened on her chair's controls. "Then that's where we're going." "Not yet," Ezra cautioned. "We need to prepare. The Phantom needs additional modifications for long-range travel, and," he gestured to the biomechanical leg schematics, "I'd like to start building these. If you're willing." The prospect both terrified and thrilled her. After years of accepting her condition as permanent, the possibility of change, of regaining something she'd lost, seemed almost too miraculous to contemplate. "Why would you do this for me?" she asked quietly. "You barely know me." Ezra was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he retrieved something from a secured cabinet, a small memory crystal that glowed with stored data. Because I knew your brother, he said finally. Owen Novak. We served together in the Rim conflicts before I became an independent contractor. The name hit Dahlia like a physical blow. Owen had died in the Rim conflicts 6 years ago, or so she'd been told. How did you know him? He saved my life during the Battle of Ceres, Ezra said softly. And before he died, he made me promise to look out for his sister, the brilliant navigator who was always reaching for the stars. Tears stung Dahlia's eyes, the first she'd allowed herself since receiving news of Owen's death. He never told me much about his military service. He was protecting you, Ezra explained. Owen discovered something during the conflicts, something about corporate involvement in prolonging the fighting. He suspected it connected to a hidden research facility. QN 773, Dahlia whispered. I believe so, Ezra nodded. I've been searching for it ever since. When I tracked down the other navigation officers and found your name among them, I realized our paths were meant to cross. Dahlia felt as if the station's gravity had suddenly increased, pressing her into her chair with the weight of this revelation. So all this, fixing my chair, the phantom, these leg schematics. Started as a promise to Owen, Ezra admitted. But continued because I've come to care about what happens to you, Dahlia. More than I expected to. The confession hung between them, fragile and significant. After a long moment, Dahlia reached out and took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. Then let's build these legs, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion tightening her throat. And then let's find QN 773 and discover what was worth destroying so many lives to keep secret. Ezra's hand tightened around hers, the connection between them strengthening like a quantum entanglement, two particles forever linked across any distance. We'll need specialized components, he said, his voice taking on a practical tone though his eyes remained fixed on their joined hands. Some of which aren't exactly available through authorized channels. Then we'll get them through unauthorized channels, Dahlia replied, surprising herself with her ready acceptance of the illegal implications. I've spent 3 years following rules that were created by the same people who took my legs and my brother. I'm done playing by their restrictions. A slow smile spread across Ezra's face, part admiration, part something deeper. In that case, Navigator Novak, I believe we have a course to plot. And for the first time since the explosion that had changed her life, Dahlia felt the familiar thrill of possibility, not just of vengeance or answers, but of a future she hadn't dared imagine until now. The underground maintenance tunnel echoed with the soft hum of Dahlia's hover chair as she followed Ezra through the dimly lit passage. The station's artificial day-night cycle had shifted to evening hours, casting long shadows across the metal walkways and exposed conduits. Are you sure this contact of yours is reliable? Dahlia whispered, eyes scanning the tunnel ahead. After 2 weeks of gathering components for her biomechanical legs, they were down to the final, most crucial element, a neural interface accelerator that could bridge the damaged connection between her spine and the prosthetics. Vega's never let me down, Ezra replied, his voice low. Besides, she owes me after I helped her escape that Centaurian prison ship last year. Dahlia raised an eyebrow. Prison ship? You neglected to mention your contact is a fugitive. Former fugitive, Ezra corrected with a grin. The charges were completely fabricated. Mostly. Before Dahlia could respond, a figure emerged from an alcove ahead, a tall woman with luminescent tattoos swirling across her shaved scalp and down her neck. Her eyes were covered by optical enhancements that gave her a perpetually alert appearance. Kane, the woman acknowledged, her accent placing her origin somewhere in the outer colonies. You're late. Station security was doing surprise scans on level 4, Ezra explained. We had to take the long way around. He gestured to Dahlia. This is my partner, Dahlia Novak. Vega studied Dahlia with unconcealed curiosity. The navigator. I've heard whispers about what happened to you on the Astral Dawn. Nasty business. Dahlia tensed. What exactly have you heard? That you saw something you weren't supposed to see, Vega replied, reaching into her jacket to produce a small containment box. Something valuable enough to kill 4. Did your sources mention what that something was? Dahlia pressed. Vega's mouth curved into a knowing smile. Information's an extra charge, love. But today, I'm feeling generous. She handed the containment box to Ezra. The accelerator, as promised. Military-grade neural interface technology, salvaged from a Prometheus-class warship. Ezra examined the device through the transparent section of the container, a delicate arrangement of crystalline filaments and quantum nodes that pulsed with subtle energy. It's perfect, he murmured. How much? For you. 12,000 credits. Vega's enhanced eyes gleamed. Half now, half when it works. Dahlia's breath caught. The sum was staggering, nearly all their combined resources. Ezra didn't hesitate, transferring the first payment from his personal chip. Now, he said, securing the container, about that information. Vega leaned against the tunnel wall. Word is that several navigation officers stumbled across a hidden transmission network, encrypted communications between corporate ships and an unregistered facility in the Magellan Void. The transmissions contained data about something called Project Lazarus. Dahlia and Ezra exchanged glances. Does that mean anything to you? Ezra asked. No, Dahlia admitted. But it could be connected to the coordinates we found. Those coordinates, Vega continued, have become something of a death sentence for anyone who discovered them. You're the only navigator who survived, Novak. The others weren't so lucky. So my accident wasn't an accident at all, Dahlia said, a cold certainty settling in her chest. Corporation called Quantum Nexus arranged it, Vega confirmed. They've been very thorough about cleaning up loose ends. The name sent a chill down Dahlia's spine. Quantum Nexus was one of the largest technology conglomerates in the sector, with tentacles reaching into every aspect of interstellar commerce. They had also been a major contractor during the Rim conflicts where Owen had served. We need to move, Ezra said abruptly. If Quantum Nexus is involved, they might already know we're looking into this. Vega's expression darkened. They definitely know. There's been a corporate security team asking questions about both of you for the past 3 days. I'd suggest making yourselves scarce. The Phantom is ready, Ezra told Dahlia. We can leave tonight. Not until we test the neural interface, Dahlia insisted. I'm not leaving Helix 9 in this chair if there's an alternative. Ezra nodded, understanding the determination in her voice. Then we do the initial synchronization now and hope it works on the first try. They bid farewell to Vega, who disappeared back into the shadows of the maintenance tunnels, and made their way to Ezra's workshop through a series of service corridors to avoid detection. Ezra's workshop had been transformed in the weeks since they'd begun the project. The central area was now dominated by a medical pod, salvaged from a decommissioned emergency transport and modified to Ezra's exacting specifications. The biomechanical legs hung nearby, their intricate components gleaming under the workshop's lights. It's really happening, Dahlia murmured, a mixture of hope and trepidation washing over her as she approached the pod. Last chance to back out, Ezra said, though his tone suggested he knew her answer already. Dahlia shook her head. I've spent too long being grounded. I want to walk again, to run, to stand at the navigation console of the Phantom without this chair between me and the stars. Ezra's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with now familiar ease. The past weeks had transformed their partnership into something deeper, moments of shared purpose giving way to shared confidences, casual touches becoming deliberate connections. Neither had put words to the change, but it lingered in every glance, every conversation. The synchronization process will be intense, Ezra warned. The accelerator needs to map your neural pathways, establish new connections to bypass the damaged sections of your spine. Will it hurt? Dahlia asked pragmatically. Yes, Ezra admitted. But I've programmed the medical pod to administer targeted analgesics. You'll feel pressure, maybe some discomfort, but the worst of it should be dulled. Dahlia nodded, suddenly hesitant despite her earlier resolve. And you've done this before? Theoretical knowledge only, Ezra said, his honesty both reassuring and terrifying. But I've spent years studying neural interface technology. The principles are sound. Taking a deep breath, Dahlia transferred from her hover chair to the medical pod, settling into the contoured surface with practiced ease. Ezra activated the pod systems, holographic displays springing to life around them. "Ready?" he asked, his voice softening. "Ready," Dahlia confirmed, forcing confidence into her tone. The medical pod hummed to life, scanning her body with invisible sensors. Ezra worked the controls with practiced precision, monitoring every aspect of the procedure. The neural accelerator was connected to her existing implants, its quantum nodes pulsing with energy as it began mapping her neural architecture. The first wave of sensation hit Dahlia like an electrical storm, not quite pain, but an overwhelming awareness of parts of her body that had been numb for years. She gasped, gripping the edges of the pod. "It's working," Ezra said, excitement coloring his voice as he studied the displays. "The accelerator is establishing connections faster than I anticipated." Dahlia could barely focus on his words as waves of tingling sensation cascaded through her lower body. Then, suddenly, something she hadn't felt in over 3 years, her toes. She could feel them, could sense their position even though they weren't there. "Ezra," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I can feel my feet." His eyes met hers, filled with shared wonder. Phantom sensations. The accelerator is reactivating dormant neural pathways. The procedure continued for nearly 2 hours, Dahlia's consciousness floating in a strange liminal space between pain and revelation as her nervous system awakened to new possibilities. When it finally ended, she lay exhausted but transformed, her body humming with unfamiliar energy. "We need to wait at least 8 hours before attempting to connect the legs," Ezra said, helping her back to her hover chair. "Your neural pathways need time to stabilize." Dahlia nodded, too overwhelmed for words. The station's alarm system chose that moment to blare to life, red emergency lights flashing throughout the workshop. "Security breach, level 5, announced the station's synthetic voice. "All personnel clear the area. Corporate security protocol engaged." Ezra's expression hardened. "Quantum Nexus. They found us." "The legs," Dahlia said, panic rising in her throat. "We can't leave them." "We won't." Ezra moved quickly, gathering the biomechanical prosthetics and essential components. "But we need to reach the Phantom before they lock down the docking bays." With practiced efficiency, they packed what they needed, the legs, the neural interface equipment, and the data they'd gathered about QN 773. Dahlia's mind raced as she considered their options, her navigator's instincts plotting escape routes through the station. Maintenance Shaft 7B, she decided. It connects directly to the private docking level. They'll expect us to use the main corridors. Ezra nodded, trusting her spatial awareness implicitly. "Lead the way." They moved through the station like wraiths, Dahlia's hover chair surprisingly agile in the narrow maintenance corridors. Twice they narrowly avoided security patrols, pressing into shadows as armored figures passed by, corporate soldiers, not station security, their uniforms bearing the subtle insignia of Quantum Nexus. "They're not even trying to be subtle," Ezra murmured as they watched a patrol pass. "Whatever Project Lazarus is, they're desperate to keep it hidden." After what felt like hours, they reached the private docking bay where the Phantom waited, her sleek hull reflecting the emergency lights. Ezra quickly inputted the access codes, and the ship's entry ramp descended like an offering of salvation. "We made it," Dahlia breathed as they boarded, the ramp closing behind them. "Not quite yet," Ezra cautioned, hurrying to the cockpit. "They'll have the bay doors locked down. I need to override the station's security protocols." While Ezra worked on breaking through the security systems, Dahlia secured their cargo, ensuring the biomechanical legs and associated equipment were safely stowed. Through the viewport, she could see armored figures entering the docking bay, weapons raised. Ezra, she called urgently. We have company. Almost there, he replied, fingers flying across the controls. Just need to, got it. The docking bay doors began to open, revealing the star-studded blackness beyond. At the same moment, the corporate security team opened fire, energy weapons striking the Phantom's hull with sizzling impacts. Hang on. Ezra called as he engaged the engines. The ship lurched forward, breaking free of the docking clamps and shooting into space. Behind them, Helix 9 rapidly diminished to a glowing speck as the Phantom's stealth systems engaged, rendering them nearly invisible to pursuit. Setting course for the Magellan Void, Dahlia announced, her hands finding their place on the navigation console with muscle memory that transcended her years of absence from space. As the Phantom's quantum drive engaged, propelling them toward the mysterious coordinates of QN 773, Dahlia and Ezra exchanged glances filled with shared purpose and unspoken emotion. You know they'll be waiting for us, Dahlia said quietly. Let them wait, Ezra replied, his hand finding hers across the console. We have something they don't. And what's that? His fingers tightened around hers. Each other. In the artificial gravity of the Phantom, surrounded by the infinite darkness of space punctuated by distant stars, Dahlia felt something she hadn't experienced since before the accident, a sense of possibility, of horizons expanding rather than contracting. And beside her, Ezra Kane, salvager, engineer, the man who had given her back her future, looked at her not with pity for what she had lost, but with admiration for who she was becoming. The stars streaked by outside, drawing them inexorably toward answers about Owen's death, Dahlia's accident, and the secrets of Project Lazarus. But in that moment, suspended between past and future, Dahlia made a choice. She leaned across the console and kissed Ezra, bridging the final distance between them. When they separated, his eyes reflected the starlight, luminous with surprise and joy. What was that for? He asked softly. For giving me back the stars, Dahlia replied. And for showing me that there are paths forward I never imagined. As the Phantom carried them toward the unknown, Dahlia felt more certain than ever that whatever waited at their destination, they would face it not as broken individuals seeking revenge, but as something greater than the sum of their parts, a binary system of hearts orbiting each other, drawing strength from their shared gravity. Part 4, Gravity's Pull. The vast emptiness of the Magellan Void stretched before the Phantom like an ocean of perfect darkness. Unlike regular space with its scattered stars and cosmic debris, the void was a phenomenon that scientists still struggle to explain, a region seemingly devoid of matter where light itself behaved strangely. Neural interface calibration complete, announced the ship's computer as Dahlia lay in the converted medical bay, her body connected to the biomechanical legs for the first time. Ezra monitored the readings carefully, his expression a mixture of professional focus and personal concern. How does it feel? Strange, Dahlia admitted. Like my legs are both mine and not mine simultaneously. That's normal, Ezra assured her. Your brain is adapting to the new neural connections. The accelerator is functioning perfectly. 3 days had passed since their escape from Helix 9. The Phantom had performed flawlessly, its stealth systems keeping them hidden from corporate patrols as they traveled deeper into uncharted space. They had used the time to prepare, both for their arrival at QN 773 and for Dahlia's first steps with her new legs. Ready to try standing? Ezra asked, offering his hand. Dahlia nodded, her heart racing with anticipation and fear. The biomechanical legs were attached to her body at mid-thigh, the connection points covered with a synthetic material that matched her skin tone perfectly. Their sleek design featured articulated joints and a carbon fiber skeleton covered with a responsive polymer that mimicked muscle tissue. She took Ezra's hand and focused on the neural commands she'd been practicing mentally, simple instructions to move, to bend, to support weight. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the right leg shifted, followed by the left. That's it, Ezra encouraged, his voice gentle. Your neural pathways are remembering. With painful slowness, Dahlia swung her legs over the edge of the medical bed, the biomechanical limbs responding to her thoughts with increasing precision. Ezra stood before her, both hands extended now, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've got you," he promised. Taking a deep breath, Dahlia pushed herself forward and up, and for the first time in over 3 years, she stood on her own 2 feet. Her balance wavered, the new legs simultaneously lighter and heavier than she expected. Ezra's hand steadied her, but the miracle was undeniable, she was standing. "How do they feel?" Ezra asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Like freedom," Dahlia whispered, tears streaming down her face as she took a tentative step forward, then another. Each movement became more fluid as her brain adapted to the neural interface, recognizing the biomechanical limbs as extensions of her own body. By the 5th step, she was walking with only minimal support from Ezra. By the 10th, she released his hands entirely, moving across the medical bay with growing confidence. "You're incredible," Ezra breathed, watching her with undisguised wonder. Dahlia turned to him, her face radiant with joy despite the tears. "We did this together." Moving with newfound grace, she walked back to him and wrapped her arms around his neck, relishing the sensation of standing chest to chest without the hover chair between them. When she kissed him this time, it was with the full weight of her body pressed against his, her new legs supporting her as she expressed what words couldn't contain. "I never thought I'd feel this again," she murmured against his lips. To stand, to walk, to... The ship's alarm interrupted them, a sharp series of beeps that signaled their approach to the coordinates. "We're here," Ezra said, reluctantly breaking their embrace. QN 773. Together, they made their way to the cockpit, Dahlia walking slowly but steadily, her steps growing more confident with practice. Through the viewport, the darkness of the Magellan void was interrupted by a small, dark mass barely visible against the backdrop of nothingness. "That's it?" Dahlia asked, settling into the navigation chair. "It's tiny. Size can be deceptive," Ezra replied, activating the ship's scanning systems. "Especially in the void." The phantom sensors struggled to penetrate the strange properties of the region, but gradually a clearer image formed, not a moon or asteroid as they had expected, but a massive space station cunningly disguised to appear small and insignificant from a distance. "Quantum dampening technology," Ezra observed. "It's hiding its true size and energy signature." "Impressive engineering," Dahlia agreed, studying the readings. "But why go to such lengths to hide a research facility?" "Let's find out," Ezra said, guiding the phantom closer. As they approached, the station seemed to shimmer and expand, its actual dimensions revealing themselves, a massive ring structure surrounding a central hub, the entire facility rotating slowly to generate artificial gravity. "No obvious docking ports," Dahlia noted. "And no response to our approach." "They know we're here," Ezra said grimly. "Their sensors would have detected us despite the Phantom's stealth systems. They're watching, waiting." A transmission suddenly cut through their communications system, the voice cold and professional. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately or face defensive measures." Ezra and Dahlia exchanged glances. "Now or never," he said softly. Dahlia nodded and opened a channel. "Station QN 773, this is Navigator Dahlia Novak of the vessel Phantom. I believe you've been expecting me for about 3 years now." A long silence followed, then, "Navigator Novak. We thought you were eliminated in the Astral Dawn incident. How unfortunate for all involved that you survived." "Especially unfortunate for whoever arranged the explosion," Dahlia replied, her voice steady despite the anger coursing through her. "I'm here for answers about Project Lazarus and why it was worth killing for." Another pause, then, "Remain in your current position. Attempt to approach or leave, and you will be destroyed." The transmission cut off abruptly. "Charming reception," Ezra muttered. "They're stalling," Dahlia realized, studying the station's energy readings. "Look, they're powering up something in the central hub. Massive energy spike. Weapons?" Ezra asked, hands moving to the Phantom's defensive controls. No, it's, Dahlia's eyes widened as she interpreted the data. It's a jump signature. They're preparing to move the entire station. That's impossible, Ezra stated. No technology exists that could transport a structure that size through space. Apparently Project Lazarus disagrees, Dahlia replied grimly. Ezra made a split-second decision. We need to board that station before it disappears. If we wait for an invitation, we'll never get answers. How? They'll see us coming, Dahlia pointed out. A slow smile spread across Ezra's face. Not if we use the Phantom's most unique feature. He flipped a series of switches, revealing a hidden control panel. Siren-class vessels have one capability the Centauri Accord specifically banned, quantum phasing. Dahlia's eyes widened with understanding. They can temporarily shift out of normal spacetime. That's why they were discontinued. And why I've spent weeks modifying this one, Ezra confirmed. We can phase through their outer defenses, rematerialize inside, and find what we're looking for before they realize we're aboard. If the phasing fails, we'll either be atomized or trapped between dimensions, Dahlia warned. Ezra reached across the console, taking her hand. Trust me. Always, she replied without hesitation. Ezra activated the quantum phasing system, and the Phantom's hull began to vibrate with increasing intensity. Outside, the view of the station wavered and distorted as reality itself seemed to bend around them. Hold on, Ezra warned. This will be unusual. The sensation that followed defied description, as if they were simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, their physical forms stretched across multiple potential realities. Dahlia's new legs registered phantom pain that wasn't quite pain, more an awareness of existing in multiple states at once. Then, abruptly, they rematerialized inside the station, the Phantom now resting in what appeared to be a cargo bay, its systems momentarily offline from the strain of the quantum transition. We made it, Dahlia breathed, checking the environmental readings. Atmosphere is breathable. Gravity at standard levels. We don't have much time, Ezra said, grabbing portable scanning equipment and weapons from the ship's storage compartment. The Phantom needs at least 2 hours to recharge before we can phase out again, and that's assuming they don't discover us first. Dahlia stood, testing her legs. The quantum phasing had temporarily disrupted the neural interface, but the connection was rapidly re-establishing itself. I'm good to go, she assured him, accepting the sidearm he offered. Together they exited the Phantom, sealing it behind them. The cargo bay was dimly lit and appeared unused, perfect for their clandestine arrival. Ezra accessed a terminal, quickly bypassing the security protocols. Central Command is located in the hub, he reported. Whatever Project Lazarus is, that's where we'll find it. They moved through the station with cautious efficiency, using maintenance corridors and service tunnels to avoid detection. Dahlia's new legs performed flawlessly, allowing her to move silently alongside Ezra. This doesn't make sense, she whispered as they paused at a junction. For a supposedly secret research facility, it's surprisingly empty. Ezra nodded, checking his scanner. Minimal life signs. Either it's operating with a skeleton crew, or most of the work is automated, Dahlia finished. They continued deeper into the station, encountering no resistance. The corridors were pristine, clearly maintained but eerily devoid of personnel. Finally, they reached the central hub, a massive circular chamber with a transparent dome revealing the void beyond. In the center stood a structure unlike anything Dahlia had ever seen, a towering column of energy contained within crystalline walls, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed almost organic. What is that? She murmured, approaching the structure cautiously. I believe, said a voice behind them, that you've been looking for Project Lazarus. They spun around, weapons raised, to find themselves facing a solitary figure, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Despite being unarmed and outnumbered, she showed no fear. Director Werner, Ezra identified her. Head of Quantum Nexus's Special Projects Division. Mr. Kane, the woman acknowledged with a slight inclination of her head. Your reputation precedes you. And Navigator Novak, walking again, I see. Impressive. You tried to kill me, Dahlia stated coldly. You killed my brother and the other navigators. Actually, Director Werner corrected, we tried to recruit you. The explosive device on the Astral Dawn was only meant to incapacitate, to give us leverage. Your injuries were more severe than intended. And that's supposed to make it better? Dahlia demanded. No, Werner admitted. But context matters. You discovered our transmission network, evidence of something unprecedented. We couldn't risk exposure before we were ready. Ready for what? Ezra demanded, gesturing toward the energy column. What is Project Lazarus? Director Werner's expression softened with something like pride as she gazed at the pulsing structure. The answer to humanity's greatest limitation, death itself. You're talking about resurrection, Dahlia said skeptically. I'm talking about transcendence, Werner corrected. The perfect preservation and transfer of human consciousness into a new form. Imagine never losing the knowledge, the experience, the essence of our greatest minds. At what cost? Ezra challenged. The lives of those who discovered your secret. The ethics of playing God. Progress requires sacrifice, Werner replied simply. Always has. My brother, Dahlia said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Was he one of your sacrifices? Werner hesitated, then answered with unexpected gentleness. Lieutenant Novak was more than a sacrifice. He was a volunteer. What are you saying? Dahlia demanded. Project Lazarus needed test subjects, minds strong enough to withstand the transfer process. Your brother was exceptional, his neural patterns uniquely suited to our needs. You're lying, Dahlia whispered, though doubt began to creep into her certainty. Am I? Werner asked, approaching a nearby terminal. Perhaps you should ask him yourself. She entered a command sequence, and the energy column's pulsing changed rhythm. A holographic interface appeared, and within it, a face Dahlia had thought lost forever, Owen Novak, looking exactly as she remembered him. Hello, Dahlia, the image said, its voice achingly familiar. I've been waiting for you to find me. Part 5, Beyond the Horizon. This isn't possible, Dahlia whispered, her new legs nearly giving way beneath her as she stared at the holographic image of her brother. Owen died in the Rim conflicts. Parts of me did, the image replied, its expression unnervingly similar to her memories of Owen, the slight quirk at the corner of his mouth when confronted with something unexpected, the thoughtful furrow between his brows. But what makes us human isn't our bodies, Dahlia. It's our memories, our consciousness. Ezra moved closer to Dahlia, his hand finding hers in silent support. How can we know this is really Owen Novak and not a simulation program to respond like him? Director Werner gestured toward the energy column. Project Lazarus isn't about creating simulations. It's about preserving the actual neural patterns that constitute consciousness. Everything that made Lieutenant Novak who he was, every memory, every personality trait, every emotional connection, was captured at the moment of his physical death and transferred to our quantum matrix. Do you remember the constellation we invented when we were kids? Dahlia asked the image suddenly. The one only visible from the roof of Dad's workshop on summer nights. The holographic image of Owen smiled, the expression so achingly familiar it made Dahlia's chest tighten. The space dragon. You insisted it had 7 stars for its spines, but I argued it needed 9 to be properly fearsome. Tears welled in Dahlia's eyes. That detail wasn't in any record, it was a private memory shared only between siblings. It's really you. Yes and no, Owen's image replied candidly. I'm not flesh and blood anymore, but I'm not just a recording either. I think, I feel, I grow. I'm something new. Dahlia turned to Werner, anger replacing shock. You still haven't explained why you tried to kill the navigators who discovered your transmission network. The project wasn't ready for public knowledge, Werner admitted. The ethical implications alone would have shut us down before we could perfect the technology. And certain competitors would have stolen our research without hesitation. So instead you killed innocent people, Ezra said flatly. We eliminated threats to the project, Werner corrected. Except for you, Navigator Novak. We intended to bring you in, to reunite you with your brother and offer you a place among us. By crippling me first? Dahlia challenged. By ensuring your cooperation, Werner replied. We needed your navigational skills, your understanding of spatial anomalies. The next phase of Project Lazarus requires precise coordinates for deployment. Deployment? Ezra repeated, suspicion evident in his voice. You're planning to weaponize this technology. Not weaponize, Owen's image interjected. Distribute. Project Lazarus isn't meant to be confined to this station. It's meant to transform humanity's relationship with mortality itself. The realization dawned on Dahlia with horrifying clarity. You're building a network, a way to transfer consciousness across interstellar distances instantaneously. That's what the navigators discovered. Precisely, Werner confirmed. Quantum entanglement on a cosmic scale. Death would become merely a transition, not an end. At what cost? Ezra demanded. How many more people will die to preserve your vision of immortality? Fewer than will die if we do nothing, Owen's image answered. Every day, invaluable minds and experiences are lost forever to accidents, disease, age. Project Lazarus offers continuation. And who decides who gets this continuation? Dahlia asked. Who's worthy of transcending death? Werner's expression hardened. Initially, those who can afford it. Eventually, perhaps everyone. The rich get immortality while the poor remain mortal, Ezra scoffed. How predictably corporate. It's a starting point, Werner insisted. All revolutionary technology begins with limited application before becoming universal. And what happens to those who oppose you? Dahlia asked. More accidents. More lives destroyed. Before Werner could answer, the station's alarms blared to life. A voice announced over the intercom, security breach in Sector 7. Unknown vessel detected within the facility. The Phantom, Ezra realized. They've found it. Werner's expression betrayed genuine concern. They weren't supposed to be here yet. We need more time. Who's they? Dahlia demanded. My former partners, Werner explained grimly. When I refused to weaponize Project Lazarus for military applications, they decided to take control by force. The station's quantum jump preparations, Ezra recalled. You were trying to escape them. Yes, Werner confirmed. And now they're here. The energy column's rhythm accelerated, pulsing with increasing urgency. Owen's image flickered momentarily. Dahlia, you need to get to safety. The matrix is destabilizing. I'm not leaving you, Dahlia insisted. Not when I've just found you again. You must, Owen's image urged. But take this. A data port on the terminal ejected a small crystal, the same type of memory storage Ezra had shown her weeks ago. Everything I am, everything I've learned, it's all contained here. A portable version of my consciousness. Dahlia took the crystal, cradling it carefully. Can you survive outside the matrix? In limited form, Owen confirmed. But it's better than complete dissolution if the facility is destroyed. The station shuddered violently, lights flickering. They're attacking the orbital stabilizers, Werner reported, checking a nearby console. We have minutes before structural integrity fails. The Phantom, Ezra said urgently. If it's still operational, we can escape. Go, Werner told them. I need to stay and initiate the emergency protocols. There are other consciousnesses in the Matrix, I can't abandon them. Dahlia hesitated, torn between escaping with Ezra and staying to learn more about her brother's fate. Owen, I. Live, Dahlia, Owen's image said softly. That's all I ever wanted for you. To live fully, to reach for the stars. Now you can do that again. His holographic gaze shifted to Ezra. Take care of her. With everything I have, Ezra promised. Another explosion rocked the station, more violent than the first. Alarms blared throughout the facility. Go. Werner shouted. Take the maintenance shaft, it's the fastest route back to your ship. With one last look at Owen's image, her brother, yet not her brother, Dahlia turned and ran alongside Ezra, the crystal clutched tightly in her hand. Her biomechanical legs responded perfectly, carrying her through the corridors with a speed and grace she had almost forgotten was possible. They encountered resistance, security forces in unmarked combat gear who fired without warning. Ezra returned fire with precision, creating a path through the chaos. Dahlia moved with newfound confidence, her body and her new legs working in seamless harmony as they fought their way back to the Phantom. When they reached the cargo bay, they found the ship surrounded by armed personnel. We can't reach it, Dahlia said, assessing the situation from their concealed position. We can, Ezra countered, pulling a small device from his pocket. Remember the quantum phasing? Works on people too, in limited applications. You never mentioned that, Dahlia remarked, eyes widening. Saving it for a special occasion, Ezra replied with a grim smile. This qualifies. He activated the device, and Dahlia felt the same strange sensation she had experienced aboard the Phantom, reality bending around them, their forms becoming temporarily intangible. They walked directly through the security team, invisible to normal perception, and boarded the ship. The effect lasted only moments, but it was enough. By the time the security forces realized what had happened, the Phantom's engines were already powering up. The phasing system is damaged, Ezra reported as they strapped into their seats. We'll have to fight our way out conventionally. I'm on it, Dahlia replied,